Things just completely changed as a new report has dropped surrounding Trey Yavage that not only completely changes the outlook of him starting this upcoming season, but this new report reveals some details surrounding how the Jays are going to use him that is not only, quite frankly, very smart, but also goes to show why they've held on to so many starting pitchers, as this involves them limiting his innings heavily. And there's some interesting details you're going to want to stay tuned for. But not only that, we have Dylan Cease going out and doing things that I don't even think many fans expected, touching very, very high digits on his fastball very early on in spring training, as well as a couple interesting things, including one surrounding José Berríos. But folks, things have just completely shifted surrounding this Jays starting rotation, and you're going to want to stay tuned to the very end of the video. But before we get into it all, if you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Jays content. Folks, ton to go over today, and let's dive right into it. There is a lot to discuss here, and a report dropped yesterday surrounding Trey Yavage. As details emerge about Trey Yavage's spring schedule, it's becoming clear that the Blue Jays are being especially deliberate when it comes to the 22-year-old starter, per Ben Nicholson-Smith. And I had a video on this last week, and it was basically covering, or maybe earlier this week, either way, time's flying. But it's basically covering how initially their plan for Trey Yavage was to slowly integrate him, and now it's basically official. They're going to be limiting his innings heavily to start. Now, I'm not saying he's not going to finish being a very notable starter, but there's a real chance here that he's not even going to be, he may not be in the first round of the rotations to start the year. And let's dive into it. Well, best case scenario for Trey Yavage is to have him ready to pitch 5+ innings when the season begins. John Schneider says the Jays will ramp him up deliberately. If that means 3 to 4 innings pitched, games to start the season, Jays are okay with that. Plan is he'll ramp up at the MLB level, though, not AAA. And this is huge news because what was at one point, and still is, a very, very deep starting rotation, but at least opening day, right? The depth there. They're going to be potentially having Trey Yavage only throw 3 to 4 innings, which then, of course, opens up piggyback, options with Eric Lauer. There's a ton of different things here, but just kind of my initial reaction to this. I mean, Trey Yavage is coming off of a huge year, both in the minor leagues, starting at low A and going all the way up to the World Series, Game 6, I believe it was, whatever game it was, where he played tons of innings, the most innings he's ever thrown. And at the end of the day, they need him to be healthy, and I am perfectly fine with this. Just so we're clear, I'm perfectly fine with this. You can see this tweet, good move. Then around mid-May to June, Yavage, start, and then obviously let him be let loose a little, and then ultimately be ready for the full season. I don't think it's going to be as serious as that, but I do think that Trey Yavage is going to be maybe doing 3 to 4 inning spurts for the first month or two, and then you get him locked in starting 5, 6 innings per start, and you'll be in good shape here. But here's the full report, and keep an eye out for kind of the way the wording is. So one way or another, the Jays were likely to manage his workload at some point, and if he is available for only 3 or 4 innings and 60 pitches to start the year, that means the Jays could pair him with Eric Lauer. So this is probably going to reduce the chances of an Eric Lauer trade, but you still never know, right? If he requests it or whatever. I think he's proven that he belongs in the team. I think it's just making sure that he's ready to have a normal-ish workload. Obviously, he's proven that he belongs in the team, clearly, but they do have to manage his workload. And this is something we've seen with Alek Manoah, who you could argue the Jays pitched too hard. Nate Pearson, they didn't pitch him too hard, but injuries. They finally have a guy they know is fantastic, and I cannot overstate this, right? Make sure that you're prioritizing his health long-term, because the Jays have an abundance of starting pitchers, and that's what makes it even more interesting. I mean, they clearly now signed Max Scherzer for a multitude of reasons. You have Dylan Cease, Kevin Gausman, Yavage, Ponce, Bieber, Berríos, Scherzer, Lauer, and let's assume that Bieber, who is going to miss the start of the season on the IL, with, of course, rehabbing from his Tommy John, he's going to miss the start of the year. And let's say Trey Yavage is only ready for a few innings. All of a sudden, you still have Max Scherzer, who's going to take a couple months to ramp up, but you have José Berríos, who looked phenomenal yesterday. Eric Lauer, who's going to start some games. You have the depth, and that depth that Ross Atkins has created allows them to use and be very careful with how they use Trey Yavage. Now, he did throw to live hitters yesterday, which is a couple days ago now, because this tweet was from yesterday, in Dunedin, and will likely do so again in the coming days. He may only get built up to 3 to 4 innings by end of camp and pitch shorter outings to begin the season. So you could have him starting games and then Lauer piggybacking. You could have, some openers and then, Savage bouncing back off of the opener. Tons of different ways to utilize it, but I love it. I think it makes a ton of sense. I know some people might be talking, and I've seen Sid Sixero online talking about how, you don't want to baby him. He's obviously an absolute beast. He's a fantastic pitcher. You have to take care of his arm. He pitched so many innings last year. He's probably experiencing some sort of arm fatigue. It's the shortest, spring training that he's ever going to have, or at least the shortest break between end of season and spring training that he's probably ever going to have, unless he get back to Game 7 of the World Series. So they pushed his arm way past where it probably should be, and you had to, right? But as you get that information now, it makes all the sense in the world as to why they're going to keep him slowly but surely ramped up. And I love it. Fantastic decision. And it also makes more sense now as to why they didn't trade Berríos, why they didn't trade Lauer, why they went out and signed Max Scherzer. They obviously know better than us when it comes to that stuff. And I'm glad the way that Ross Atkins handled it. But speaking of handling it, in a second, we'll dive in Dylan Cease. Feel free to pause and read this. This was from a week ago before the new report came out about exactly how they're planning to do it. But he was talking about, John Schneider was talking about their approach, talking about how it's going to be slower. The broad picture, I think, would be unrealistic to say, here's your 32 start. So he's going to be slow, right? And they're going to be very mindful. So keep an eye on that. But folks, someone who didn't get off to a slow start is Dylan Cease. He was up really high velocity. So chatted with Dylan Cease last week, and he said his velo was already there. Now, I said in the intro about how fans probably weren't expecting this. Of course, we were all expecting, Cease to touch high 90s, but not this early in spring, at least for me. And correct me if I'm wrong. In his first Jays outing today, his fastball averaged 97.4, and he touched 98.9. Unbelievable. If this guy can come out and continue to do that and hit that velocity, that is insanity. And I mean, you pair that with the way that, again, look, you can see here, came out pumping 98 plus on his first two pitches and then touches 99 to the first batter, blowing a fastball eventually by Bryce Harper. His release point is so deceptive. The way that he throws the baseball, this is going to be, and I'm going to say it now, he's going to be a Cy Young finalist. I'm going to go out and make that hot take. That's going to be the biggest signing of the Jays offseason. You can obviously argue Kazuma Okamoto because Bo Bichette's going to be gone, or is gone rather, whatever. Dylan Cease, especially being able to anchor that bullpen, he's the ace the Jays have been searching for. Now, obviously, he's been up and down consistency-wise. Give me all of Dylan Cease. I absolutely love it. Now, on the flip side of things, you can see here, sorry, I missed a couple, I clicked the wrong one a couple times there. José Berríos, he pitched 4 scoreless innings. So you had both Cease and Berríos going in the split squad game, the Grapefruit League, and the Grapefruit League, which the Jays won last year. Hopefully they can win it this year. But his velo was back to 93.1 miles an hour. Now, there was a lot of conversation about how his velo was down last time because of the fact that it was cold, right? So ultimately he got it back. Normal caveats apply. It's early. Results don't matter, but seemingly a positive step. Very good news. Very good news overall here because we're getting José Berríos, who's absolutely looking pretty good. 4 innings is no secret. You have Trey Yavage. It's all lining up well, right? And Dylan Cease seems to be a full go, not touching 98. You have Berríos slowly but surely looking a lot better. And if his velocity can stay up with both Cease and Berríos, you're in a very good spot. But you also had some spotlights from some other players. And you could see Angel Bastardo and Spencer Miles. They're on the outside looking in. There's a lot of competition going. We're seeing Josh Kasevich be absolutely dominant. There's a lot of players that have the opportunity now to take advantage of some things. At the same time, the Jays team is pretty loaded here, and we saw some Jesus Sanchez as well yesterday.
Something shifted overnight, and you could almost hear it if you were listening closely enough. The kind of shift that makes a front office smile quietly while the rest of us scramble to catch up. When the new report on Trey Yavage dropped, it didn't just tweak expectations, it rewrote the opening chapter of this season. And as someone who's watched this club long enough to recognize intent when I see it, I'll tell you this now, the Jays are playing a longer, smarter game. The plan is no longer about unleashing Yavage and hoping for fireworks. It's about restraint, patience, and frankly, wisdom. According to John Schneider, the organization is perfectly comfortable easing him in with 3 or 4 inning outings, even at the big league level. That tells you everything. This isn't fear. This is confidence. The Toronto Blue Jays know exactly what they have, and they're determined not to burn it too early. From my seat here at the Blue Jays report, this also explains why the rotation suddenly makes so much sense. You don't stockpile arms by accident. You do it so you can protect the ones that matter most. Piggybacks, openers, creative sequencing. It's chess, not checkers. And honestly, I love it. If you're enjoying this kind of deep dive perspective, give the video a like and subscribe. It helps more than you realize. And then there's Dylan Cease, who apparently missed the memo about easing into spring. High 90s heat, early March, and a fastball that looked downright offended to be hit. I actually laughed watching the clips, the good kind, the "oh wow, that's real" kind. If that velocity sticks, we might be looking at something special. Add in a sharp, composed outing from José Berríos, velocity back where it belongs, and suddenly this rotation feels less fragile and more formidable. The pieces fit, the logic is sound, the patience is intentional. So yes, things have completely changed, not because the Jays panicked, but because they didn't. And sometimes that's how you build a season that lasts.